So hello everybody and welcome to our very first MindBody learning zone, and we're very excited but also a little bit nervous. So quick intro, I'm Carole Randell, and my lovely associate here, Amanda Collins. We noticed there was a gap for our clients which we wanted to fill, so that's why we're doing these monthly calls for people. So just to let you know, if you don't already, I'm a psychotherapist, SERPA trained practitioner. I work with clients who have had long-term medically unexplained symptoms and chronic pain. And Amanda, you're going to say a little bit about what you do.
Yes, hard sometimes to actually give myself a title because I use so many different modalities, but basically I'm a pain, trauma, fatigue recovery coach. Love my EFT tapping and doing all of that and my matrix re-imprinting stuff. But yeah, so many different things that we bring in, both of us actually, into the mix of really working with clients that are in chronic pain, got chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. Very much that's where our specialists, knowledge lies, isn't it? And help people, give them hope and move them through that, to know that recovery, in whatever form recovery is to them, is possible, really. And as Carole said, and also we wanted to start off with fear today, didn't we? Because I think fear for me has been a real underlying issue in my own recovery. Sometimes we are fearful, especially when we've got pain. We're fearful of like moving too much, because the pain might get worse. We're fearful sometimes of trying something and getting better, because other people might then want a little bit more of us, so, fear of getting something wrong, fear of getting something right, fear of what other people think. There's so much in there of fear that we can hold on to and then stop us moving forward, isn't it? And I think even me and Carole today, it's like, oh, we're going to do our very first MindBody Learning Zone live. And it's like, oh, I'm excited and maybe a bit fearful or whatever at the same time. And it's like, well, no, actually, we are safe. We are in a safe environment. So, let's get big, deep breath. And I won't tell you what the mantra is yet, because you're going to learn that. But but it's just having that stillness, that time to breathe, and then just sort of like moving forward with it. So shall we get started, Carole?
Very excited.
Here we go. There is 7 basic fears. So we have the fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of death. And most of our fears will come under one of those categories. And what we very much do when we're working with clients is trying to look at the positive side of these fears that we've got and reframe how we think about things. So we can, rather than fear of poverty, we can think, I am wealthy. Rather than fear of criticism, I am enough. Ill health, we can say, I am healthy. Loss of love, I am love. And we have to start there sometimes, and start with ourselves. When we are love, then we can give and receive love as well. Loss of liberty, we can say, I am free. Fear of old age, I'm youthful. And fear of death, I am life. And we use these affirmations, these positive affirmations within the balance procedure, which you will hear a little bit more about later on. So I just wanted to point out on our emotional guidance scale that we have here, if you look right down the bottom at 22, you can see fear is there right at the bottom, with grief, depression, despair, and that feeling of powerlessness. And it's a very low emotion. Our energy is so low when we're feeling fear. So when we are in the state of 1 to 7, we are in the parasympathetic state. So that's when we're in the rest and relaxation and healing state. And then 8 to 22, and as we said, fear is down at 22, is when we're in that sympathetic dominance, where we're ready to fight and flight or run away or freeze in that state. So I'm going to pass over to Carole now.
Thanks for that, Amanda. I wondered if it's worthwhile just explaining a little bit about the parasympathetic and sympathetic dominance, that fight, flight, freeze that and fawn, things that we recognize when we are in that fear place, that our whole body goes into kind of like that fear zone, which is that closing down. Our front thinking brain doesn't work, we can't rationalize things, and so what happens then for our body is that all the organs kind of stop working at optimum because we're trying to protect ourselves. So we're just going to talk a little bit about somatic. So quite simply, the word somatic means, what do we feel in our bodies? It's about the sensations that we feel. And these are sensations such as pain, for example, one which are what we call neurological symptoms, such as those headaches, movement disorders, we feel stiff, awkward, any weaknesses that we might feel where, we just haven't got energies, dizziness, fainting, all of those things kind of affect how we're feeling, and our digestive systems, such as abdominal pain, IBS kind of stuff, which can switch between that diarrhea being banged up or the constipation and then the incontinence, just letting things go. So what we do to kind of counteract some of these things is we make the suggestion, we do this, what we call pause, breathe, feel. So when we feel we're under attack and our muscles get really tense and we start to close down and we can't think properly, we just ask people to stop whatever it is they're doing, so we're not rushing from one thing to another. Just take a breath, release it, and feel what's actually happening in the body. Now, we can do this anytime, anywhere, in any place, but what happens is we get kind of blown around by the winds of circumstance, and we go from one activity to another, to another, to another. And then before we know it, we're feeling completely overwhelmed, completely powerless. And our system kind of starts to close down as a way of protecting us. And that's where we get these medically unexplained symptoms from. So what I would suggest that you do to start to be able to sit in the emotion and start to feel the feelings is to do the pause, breathe, feel at various times throughout the day, and just become that curious observer. I can't say the word observer. So just turning inwards, really. You can put your hand on your heart like this, or one on your belly. Do the breath and see how that releases and relaxes the tension. Might not do it straight away, so it is a practice thing to do, to feel the difference between when we're tense and when we're starting to relax. And it will be very subtle energies at first, but you will go from that feeling of heaviness, that feeling of tightness, that feeling of dizziness, to one of feeling that there is a little bit of space, creating space in there. You'll start to notice where the tightness is, particularly around this area, up into the neck, the tension. You can consciously relax it. You can say to yourself, I relax, I let go, and that will start to show you evidence of the difference between being in this fight, flight, freeze mode and being relaxed and in the sympathetic mode.
Yeah, I love that pausing.
Yeah.
And like what you said, is that when we pause, and you said, we can consciously think, what's going on there? What do I feel? Where do I feel that in my body? And sort of like thinking that letting go. And you can also do it with that like somatic experiencing side of it, isn't it? And it's just sitting with it. And we don't even have to do anything about it as well, isn't it? It's just sitting there and noticing and being observer. I'm having problems with that as well today. But being that observer and just like, oh, okay, that's a bit tight, that's, or something's churning in my tummy or whatever. But we don't spend enough time, do we, actually connecting to our feelings at all.
And this is where, what you've already briefly touched on, we're going to go into more detail later on, is things like doing the balance procedure, doing the tapping, things like that. It's all help to calm the system down.
Actually helping you make those connections with it, isn't it? Thank you for that, Carole. We also wanted to share that, did you know that fear is actually a protective part of you? So we are made up of parts. So we have the self, which is our undamaged core. It's like our essence. It's our true nature. It's what makes us us. And that is not a part. And from self comes a place of calmness, curiosity, compassion, connectiveness, confidence, creativity, courage, and clarity. So when we start then to notice things around us, and we come from a place of self, this is where we can look at something calmly or with a little bit of curiosity. You know, like Carole said, just sitting there when we're just having this feeling, just sitting there. And while we're sitting there, we're thinking, oh, that's curious. Why is my neck so tight? You know, and having that compassion for ourselves and that confidence, you know, to be able to look at things around us in a different way, maybe.
I will say, Amanda, that my first thoughts are, oh, what's going on here then?
Exactly.
Why now?
Yeah. And I think that is lovely, isn't it? When we take that moment. So remind us again what that is. So it's pause, breathe, feel. And when, I love that. Pause, breathe, feel. So we can do that from self. That part of us. And when we're doing that, and just like you say, you know, I've often said to clients about, let's be curious, you know, rather than we don't know that answer. It's like, fine, we don't have to know all the answers, but let's pause, breathe, feel, and be curious. Like, oh, why am I feeling like this? What's going on at the moment? What's triggering me at the moment? Things like that. So I think that fits in really nicely with that core self of
most definitely that kind, compassionate part of what I call adult self.
Yes, definitely.
And also that feeling of being grounded, like you said, you know, your true nature. So being grounded within yourself.
Yeah.
And actually you're okay how you are.
Exactly. We are all okay as we are. And that brings us nicely for me to actually say that, yes, we are made up of all these different parts, but every part of us is welcome. There is no bad parts in us at all. They're all just doing a different job. And when we get to know these parts and the roles they play, it starts to make more sense, doesn't it? With how we are feeling. So we have the managers. And the managers are our preventative parts. There are, you know, proactive parts. These parts manage our day-to-day lives. They minimize risk of injury. These are the parts that attempt to keep us in control and safe. So these are the parts of us that always like to plan everything out. You know, they're the self-critical part because they're like, oh no, do it this way, do it that way, because I'm trying to keep you safe. The perfectionist can also come into this manager's part, like I have to keep everything just right and perfect, you know, there and then everything could be safe and everything could be right. And then we have the firefighters. Now these are the reactive parts. Now these parts, these firefighters literally come into play when there's a part of us, and we call them exiles in parts work, when they have been triggered or they are injured or perceive a threat. And so firefighters, you think, you know, firefighters don't go to a scene if there's no fire. They wait for a fire to happen. And then it's like, right, something's happened, right, I'm going to go and put the fire out. And that's what happens with the firefighters. So they want to come along and they want to soothe us, want to distract us. They want to put out our fire, basically. Now, they use this with like, they soothe and distract us with activities. Now, this can be like shopping or working really hard or, you know, having a drink, you know, using alcohol, video games, you know, binge eating. All of these are distractions. And what they're trying to do is like, oh, you don't feel very good at the moment. Okay, what can I do to distract you, divert you, or numb you in some way so I can help you feel better? But the problem is that when these firefighters are a little bit too reactive all the time, that they take over, really. And this is where, when me and Carole work with our clients, we delve deeper. We try and find these different parts of you so we can listen to the worries and the fears, that's what we're talking about, of these firefighters. They come in because it's like, if I don't do that job, something else bad is going to happen, so they hold on to a lot of fear. And
I would also say, Amanda, not to be fearful of these particular parts, because once we acknowledge them and we welcome them home, we can then embody them.
Exactly.
And we can start to deal with those difficult emotions that come up, like fear. So actually, I welcome mine, any firefighter are in now. And it works around all those traumas and things that we bring in as well.
And that's exactly what we do, isn't it? Because when we identify a part, we very much, so just another way of explaining it is that when we have self, and then when we have a part, say it's a firefighter that's feeling fearful about something, and it sits on self, that fear is like, it just feels like it's all of us. And it's like, no, I'm feeling fearful, and we can't see that part at all. It just feels like us, and it's like everything's wrong and everything's fearful. And when we work together, we just ask that part, could you give us a little bit more space? And so when that part gives us a little bit more space, we can now see that part of us that's feeling fearful, and we befriend that part. And we want to know, well, tell me your story. We want to know what your role is. And we'll get onto it in a minute, but often that firefighter is protecting an exile. Which is the next one that we're going to show on our slide.
Can I just link that firefighter back to the somatic as well, the feeling in the body and the different symptoms it kind of creates within our body, that although we might not understand the fear, and that's what it is, we can definitely feel when our stomach's clenching.
Exactly.
And when we feel constricted around our throat, or we can't breathe and things like that. So that's worth remembering, that is how your fear comes out of the body as a somatic feeling.
As we show it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that last area of ourselves is the exiles. Now, these are the vulnerable parts of us that hold the residue of pain and the burdens from previous injury. And they carry these burdens, and often, shame, guilt, fear, which we're talking about, terror, grief, pain, loneliness, neediness, dependency, and worthlessness. That our hurt parts can carry these, sometimes one emotion, sometimes a couple of emotions. And the firefighters are good at hiding these exiles away. They kind of sort of like the hurt parts of us, aren't they? They hide.
Yeah.
And these firefighters are like, no, you're not getting there. I'm going to keep you. That hurt part's there in the corner. But us as a self, we know about those hurt parts. And this is where I found that this is where we get triggered a lot, because it's those hurt parts that something happens similar or the same as what's happened before, and all of a sudden these hurt parts are going like, oh no, it's going to happen again, and we get triggered by that. So it's just really trying to explain, very quickly, really, in this demonstration, that we're made up of all different parts, and some of these parts, even managers can feel fear that they're not doing something correctly as well. It's not just the firefighters. But as we get to know these different parts and allow the managers and the firefighters to sort of like take a step back, we can then, with the, the therapies that me and Carole use, get to know these exiles, or these hurt parts, or I do a lot of matrix reimprinting, and they're called echoes. But basically, they are the younger parts of us that have been hurt in the past. And we befriend them, we get to know them. And actually, the firefighters and managers, which is really interesting, they've got this big role. But when we unburden them of their responsibility to have to protect the exiles, they're very much like, oh, actually, I don't want to be shopping all the time or on my game all the time. I want to be doing something different now. And they go off and have fun doing something else completely different. And that's the joy of doing this work in such a non-confrontational, loving, compassionate way, that we look at all the different parts of us. And as I say, all parts are welcome, aren't they? And all parts are only doing their job from a place of love. But it's interesting, you know, we're talking about fear today, but it's interesting that fear can hold us back, but it could be a protection mechanism.
It can also be quite positive, because let's face it, we wouldn't want to be standing on the edge of a cliff with no fear.
Exactly.
You know, it can be a protective mechanism for good as well. But you know, if we can embody these different parts instead of them sitting in their little silos and being so protective of that particular part of ourselves, then that's when we can merge these together, and actually we can start to enjoy life. We can get some, you know, fun out of life. It's not all so serious, etc. I always think of managers and firefighters of having been to the gym too much, you know. So they've built these muscles up, you know, being really strong, but they've kind of got stuck in the muscle bound group. So their ease of movement isn't, you know, what it could be. And with exiles, I see them as little orphan parts. So we want to bring them in and actually encourage them to express themselves a bit more, but being surrounded by this other parts of ourselves to help support them to do that.
And I think a nice way of even reframing how we talk about something is good, you know. So, you know, when we say, you know, I'm afraid of that, or I'm fearful of that, rather than saying I am afraid of that, it's like a part of me is fearful. A part of me is afraid of this. And when we can see that it's only a part of us that, you know, we're working with, not the whole of us, it's not all engulfing, you know, it's that in itself gives us that little bit of space that our unburdened part can actually then see and get to know this part a little bit more, which I think is lovely, isn't it? Carole, would you like to talk us through about how you can stop living in fear?
So these are just some tips that Amanda and I use with our clients to start to think about things a little bit differently and not feel, you know, be afraid of fear, let's say. So one of the things we do and suggest is that we start to explore what it is that is actually making us afraid. And like Amanda's just said, it's not the whole of our life, but there will be certain parts of it that we're perhaps more fearful of. And that's usually about something in the future. When we live in the future, we get fearful around uncertainty. But the only thing we can be 100% certain of is that the future is uncertain. So if we can start to absorb that and assimilate that into our mind and start to work in the here and now, then that will start to reduce that feeling of fear of that unknown future and that anxiety stuff that accompanies all of that. So we use things like journaling for that, capturing those anxiety-inducing thoughts. You know, just get a piece of paper, scribble them down. What is it that's the thoughts? What is the repeated thought that I keep having? And that might be something along the lines, you know, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of love, or whatever it might be. So there'll be some sort of anxiety-inducing thoughts. I'm never going to get better, you know, things like that, really. So have a think about what you might be constantly going through in your mind. So we want to become very aware of these, but we don't want to fixate on them. So thoughts come and go. They're a bit like clouds in the sky, a bit like emotions. They come and go, you know, and they last, apparently, scientifically, 90 seconds, which feels like a lifetime when you're stuck in this fear, anxiety, kind of emotion, thought. But they do go. So imagine them moving through rather than being stuck. So that's why I'm saying we don't want to fixate on them. We can do things like practicing mindfulness and meditation. Both Amanda and I are great advocates of tapping. Also the balance procedure. There's a lot of things, somatic tracking, embodied processing. There's lots of things you can do to start to look at in a safe way how to tackle these anxiety inducing thoughts. We can use things like developing personal mantras and affirmations. I love affirmations. My one I have on my wall is what else is possible, because something else is always possible. We can employ logic, which is that front thinking mind, that shuts down when we feel under threat. So it's just about, am I safe? That pause, breathe, feel. You can ask yourself those sort of questions, and just being aware of what you can do, taking control of what you can right in this moment in time. Don't, as I said, project further into the future if you can help it, and just accept the things you can't. We can't be 100% great all the time. We don't have influence over other people. So as I said, the one thing we can only be 100% certain of is uncertainty. And also recognize that some fear is healthy, and we touched on that about standing on a cliff edge, for example. That is a healthy fear to have.
Thank you, Carole. And so in summary, really what me and Carole were talking about. So practice the stress reduction techniques, such as the mindful meditation, the aerobic exercise, EFT tapping, as Carole said. Both me and Carole teach that and do that with our clients, and being creative as well, which is really good for being mindful. So shift your focus to the positive emotions in daily life. Now, the balance procedure is really good for this. It helps reframe those negative beliefs that we have, and also EFT tapping that both me and Carole do as well. Carole's mentioned doing some journaling or expressive writing every day. And when we work with clients, we really share with them different ways of doing that expressive writing, be it like 20 minutes a day, or just, I like doing overwriting. So I don't like to think that somebody can possibly read what I've written. So I write one line and I write over that same line about 3 or 4 times, then go on to the next line. And I find that's really good, but also writing things down, ripping them up and burning them or throwing them away really helps us release those emotions. Work to identify the meaning and purpose in your life. Me and Carole will both say that, when we do the wellbeing wheel, there's a segment in there called life purpose. And we find that often people that are fearful, have that anxiety, have pain and fatigue, often that life purpose isn't very strong. So we help them find, that meaning of life and purpose for them. Get support from others. Again, but I would say the only caveat I would say that is the positive support from others. We can all find different groups of friends, family, or even groups out there that, but if they're in that negative kind of mindset, they can help bring us, they can pull us down. So we need to find positive support with others. Go for a walk or run in nature, or just sit in nature if you want to, but being in nature is very important for us. And I just wanted to add here, if you feel that you need more support and would like to work one-to-one with a stress illness recovery practitioner, which both, Carole and I are, then we can help you delve deeper and find the why behind your symptoms. The balance procedure that we've mentioned a couple of times already, we've got the online course, and you'll find that in your MindBody learning zone. So please do look that up and have a look to see if that's a good fit for you. And also, me and Carole offer 20-minute, discovery calls. So you can contact us and basically have a talk with us for 20 minutes. You know, we find out a little bit about your background and see if working with us is the right fit for you, which is really important for you to be able to have that discussion and talk with us. I just wanted, there was one thing that when you were talking about, Carole, about anxiety, you know, having those anxious thoughts, that I just wanted to go back on really. And it was when something happens to us and we have a traumatic event, be it, you know, what we call a little T or a big T, you know, little trauma, big trauma, our brain stores that, you know, and when something else happens in our life, it kind of goes back to that, has that happened before? Oh, I'm going to go back and have a look at that. So, you know, you were saying about the cliff edge. You know, it's like, well, stand too close to the cliff. Well, we know, you know, you could fall over that cliff. That's something we've read about or know about. So we're kind of pulling those memories all the time, aren't we, you know, forward, which can add to that fear, especially if, like what we said before, we've got those exiles, those hurt parts of us that are hiding, basically, and getting triggered. So it's important that we unburden those parts, we witness them, we resource them, we help them heal and help let go of those fears and anxieties, isn't it? That then when we go through life, and as you say, you know, life is uncertain, but if we go forward in a more unburdened way, then we don't get so triggered by everything all the time, do we?
Yeah, and I think that if nobody takes anything else from this today, I'd say just remember, you do not have to live in fear. You really don't, you know, and it's insidious. So, but it's, you know, talk to people, explain how you feel, express yourself in whatever way is comfortable for you, and that will take some of the fear out of the fear itself, because it kind of feeds on itself.
And it's interesting, you said with whatever way possible, you know, express that fear. And we've talked about journaling. And as you know, and I always go on about, because I'm dyslexic, me and journaling don't happen very often.
No.
But that's why then I like the tapping.
Yeah.
So we can just tap on the points and say how we feel, even though I'm feeling so fearful and I don't know what to do with this fear and nobody understands me, you know, we just tap on these points. And which is really lovely, isn't it? So there's lots of different ways, isn't there?
To express it, of
expressing it and letting that go. But as you say, talking, you know, just getting it out, isn't it? But I love the thing, if anything I'm going to take away from today is pause, breathe, and feel. I think that has to be our sort of like mantra of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just taking that time out. So thank you, Carole, for joining me today and for us to think. But if you've got any questions, then obviously you've got the community group in the MindBody Learning Zone. So if you've had a look at this and you think, oh, right, they didn't say this or didn't understand that, then, you know, just drop us a little message in the MindBody Learning Zone community group. And me and Carole will do our very best to answer that question for you. So we hope to see you on some of the other courses that we're doing. But if not, we'll see you in a month's time for our next sort of like monthly live chat. So brilliant. So have a good day. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.